Picture with me gospel communities multiplying in your city. What would that look like? Believers equipped and empowered to have gospel conversations everywhere everyday life takes them, where they live, work, learn, and play. We'd have single moms that didn't have to worry about childcare after school, right? We'd have full churches on Sunday morning when we can go back to full non-distance churches, right? We'd have kids that had somewhere to go after school because neighbors would be neighboring well, okay? So let that vision sink in. Gospel communities multiplying in our cities. Briefly, I'm going to introduce you to a framework that's going to help us get there. As Doug said, it's a way of thinking about evangelism that, for me, makes evangelism much more accessible to the everyday believer. It takes the scare factor out of evangelism. And so I'm going to introduce you to the idea of co-journers with a story. I'm going to tell you a story of Mary. She is someone who had grown up going to church, but she wouldn't say that God was necessarily relevant to her everyday life. She'd been through a divorce, and she had reasons to be angry at God. She questioned God's goodness. We had known each other for a long time, and so she had had the opportunity to observe my life as a believer, both the good and the bad. And she experienced a health care one year where she realized that she was not ready to face this God that she thought maybe she kind of knew. And so she began asking if we could meet regularly for lunch. So once a week we got together, and she asked her questions. We talked through several things that were standing between she and God, and talked about my commitment to Jesus, and I was actually able to share the gospel several times over the course of a few months. And one morning she called me and she said, "Hey, I was reading a story in the newspaper, and I felt like I should do something for the family mentioned in the story. Was that the Holy Spirit that you've been telling me about?" And I assured her it was, and again, was able to confirm a decision that she, in her own heart, had made to begin following Jesus. And she got involved in a small group at her church, and she began sharing Christ as she was able with the guy at the Sprint store, with a neighbor who walks her dog in her neighborhood. And she would tell you today, "I felt like I was on the outside looking in, but now I feel like I'm inside and have come to a relationship with Jesus."